why is it like in the past year or so that this has become such a big thing?
It's tough though, right? Because you say academia isn't very interested in UAPs. I don't think. I think I'm no major fan of academia. Well,
yeah.
I think that it has a lot of issues.
Yeah.
I was at Space Resources Conference. It was like the big international space resources conference. And this goes back to the earlier point, Rich, when we started to talk about cislunar space and competition between essentially allied space agencies. There's the Canadian Space Agency, NASA, the Japanese Space Agency, and the European Space Agency. And then there's China. And, you know, Russia used to be allied. We're obviously at odds now with the war in Ukraine. But when was the last time you heard anybody in any space field in academia discuss the fact that cislunar space is classified by the Space Force as a battle space? Like, we talk about LEO installations. We talk about cislunar installations. NASA talks about Gateway. I don't know if I could have a deep conversation with anybody that I've met at NASA about the fact that, like, hey, you know, it's a battle space. Have you guys considered that? Have you considered that?
Sorry. So the only place I've heard about it at NASA was a place where I worked, a small program office, and I'm going to give a little shout out for them. They're near and dear to my heart. Is the NASA Innovative Advanced Concepts program, based out of the Goddard Space Flight Center, where these discussions are not taboo, and where there is an active and extremely passionate and energetic small group of people inside of NASA reaching out with innovators across the United States to push the boundaries along the model of DARPA and discuss things that are radical, including alternative propulsion, and where they have discussed risk profiles and the importance of NASA in terms of maintaining the cislunar high ground. That was in 2017, but since then I have not heard outside of NASA, or excuse me, outside of NIAC. And each center, Mitch, I think probably you would agree, each center has its own culture.
Sure.
And I was then assigned to Johnson, which is extremely conservative, and I would say anti-innovative, right? Because they're dealing with human space flight. They don't want to look at low TRL technologies or something that is going to have immediate benefit to them for human space flight, but also more importantly for the culture of the project managers, which are looking to advance their own careers. And they don't advance their careers by spaceflight failure of experimental technology. So they're just risk averse by nature.
Well, especially because Johnson's whole thing is human spaceflight operations, right? They don't do technology development, but they deploy the systems, they operate the systems, they train the astronauts, right? And when it comes to operations, man, you're not. I mean, you don't want to take risks. You don't want to take stupid risks. And when I'm hammering NASA for risk aversion, I think like this tightrope you walk between like, hey, exploration's risky. People have always died doing it. It's inevitable because it's really hard in space. However, we don't want to mimic the Soviet space program, man.
That's right.
There are a lot of people who didn't need to die.
That's right.
Guys, I hate to cut my time short, but I do have to depart.
All right.
All right. It was nice to see you, man.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Looking forward to picking this up soon.
Great to see you, Jimmy.
Keep
up the great work.
All right, peace out, bro.
See you guys.
Six. Hold on a minute. Yeah. Okay, yeah. 6, great. I'll be right up. Okay. I can still stay on. I've got to move over a little bit.
Yeah, I could stay on for like, I'd say 15 more minutes.
I've got to scoot too, fellas. My girlfriend's calling in. You can call me this afternoon. I need to get back to her.
All right.
All right. See you later, boys.
See ya.
Great seeing you.
Yep. Bye-bye.
So I have a couple minutes. Do you want to talk about something in particular?
Let's see. Oh yeah, I was like regarding like weaponization of space, though. It's like, do you think there's a chance that a precedent could be set in this current war? Like, if let's say the U.S. gave Ukraine anti-sat missiles and they used them against Russian satellites, like,
Do I think that the United States will do that?
yeah, or like what kind of like political fallout do you think that would cause?
I don't think that they would.
Okay.
The reason is I think that it's just an opinion, but I think that Ukraine serves as a sort of a bulwark against Russian aggression, right?
Mm-hmm.
That part of the world has been in constant conflict for centuries. I think that Ukraine is a testing ground for military technology applications and results. So the people that construct weapons that are being deployed to Ukraine are not going to give the best of the best because they don't want it to fall into Russian hands or be captured by Russian intelligence for back engineering.
Mm-hmm.
However, for the stuff that's more conventional and tactical conventional, I think those are actually being sent to Ukraine for field testing. What's the efficiency? What's the kill rate, and so forth? How can we improve those technologies? And so the military industrial complex is everywhere. So in Ukraine, they're using it as a test bed for prototype testing and so forth.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, and
have
okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, and regarding like UFOs, though, like one more topic is, what do you think about the idea that we've been visited in ancient times?
Yes, the Solarian hypothesis.
No, or like the ancient astronaut thing, because I think there's some like dark history there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
what do you think of the dark history? What sort of stuff are you thinking about?
Like, because wasn't it like rooted in the whole thing, like what was it? Oh yeah, it was during like the colonial era or the imperial era during Victorian times. Like, people just thought, oh, there's these fancy civilizations here, but there's black and brown people, so there's no way they could have made it. So it had to be something else. And then so like the Nazis came along, ancient Aryan, then people just turned that into ancient aliens. So,
right. Well, right. It serves a strong colonial narrative, right? So take for example, Greater Zimbabwe in Africa. There are these megalithic superstructures which are urban centers that were depopulated, and then the colonization of South Africa by the Rothschild family and also by their associated economic interests when they come down to South Africa for resource exploitation. You know, it's the first step of colonization is to go ahead and degrade the local population, dehumanize them. And so if you dehumanize them, of course, it facilitates the ability to commit genocide as well as resource exploitation, enslavement, and so forth. I wouldn't say that this is just colonization issues by European powers. Those were the ones that were more attuned to historically. But of course, I think it's also human nature across the planet. So you can't attribute a high civilization to the civilization that you're trying to oppress. It sets up a very uncomfortable moral stance. So of course, they say that it's going to be a lost tribe, or it's going to be white Europeans that in Africa that were destroyed. You hear the same sort of narratives when it comes to North America. There's a constant stream of people that are insistent that North American civilization is the high civilization prior to main European contact in the 15th century, not just regarding Viking contact or anything like that, that it was by a massive influx of white people coming to North America. There's no reason that there can't be autonomous high civilizations around the world with correct mixture of social and economic and political conditions. And there's no evidence, I think, either that there was this large influx of Europeans coming over pre-European contact in the 15th century. But we do see, for example, that it was not a primitive society. North America was heavily populated, established trade routes. We have continuous narrative, oral histories that actually are now determined to be actually accurate we look at the Amazon, when I was in college way back when during the 1990s, gosh. During the 1990s, I remember in a biology course, they were talking about biological fuchsia and the Amazon biodiversity. Actually, it's taught at CU Boulder that the biological diversity of the Amazon is a function of remnant isolated populations of organisms during the last glacial maxima. I don't know if you've heard that the Amazonian basin was mostly savanna with small forested patches. And then as the world warmed, the patches interacted. And that's why you have this out of balance high biodiversity.
Oh.
Well, back in the, back in the 15th century, there was a Spanish explorer who went up the Amazonian basin, returned to Spain with fantastic stories of lost civilizations throughout the entire Amazonian basin, down into also Paraguay, that these civilizations went on forever and ever and ever. And it spawned this idea of Ciudad golden cities. He was denounced and said that he was crazy. When he came back, the Spanish explorers came back 50 years later, they found entire cities actually depopulated by smallpox. These cities were extended over the entire Amazonian basin. They had, they were well attuned to their environment. They had something called terra preta, which means black earth. And they were able to feed a huge population, have sophisticated society by manipulating the environment. So in fact, the Amazonian basin was actually this garden. You think it's basically a garden from one end to the other. And recent studies using LiDAR penetrate the tree canopy. You see these civilizations, remnants of civilizations, roads go on for hundreds to thousands of miles across the basin, attached to cities that are still covered in soil and trees.